So this card is fascinating. It is... God, it's an interesting one. Let's just go over it. So, Alpine Tracker is a Skycrag card, continuing the cycle that the last promos had, where it's double influence requirements of both of their factions. Double fire, double primal, cost 4, 3/3. Charge, summon, deal 1 damage to each other unit and each player. So, this is a tough one to evaluate. It's got a very powerful summon. That's more of a... generally what you would consider more of a controlling summon effect. But it can be used aggressively. And I think people will try to use it aggressively because it's tacked onto a 3/3 charge for 4. I think the best way to approach this card when evaluating it is to just consider the charge gravy. Don't consider the charge as the important part of this card. It's a nice thing that it has charge, but I think you should evaluate it, or most of the decks that will play it, the charge isn't the most important part of it, it's just a nice thing that it'll have, right? It's not like Bandit Queen, where it's a 3/3 with charge and it's going to be pushing through your small units, because it's going to kill your small units. You're not putting this in a deck, really, or you don't want to put this in a deck with, say, Assembly Line. You want to play this more as maybe a mid-range or control card that happens to be able to burst your opponent in spots. Gives you another tool to fight against weapons in spots, and just... units with charge are just naturally powerful things. Charge is a powerful keyword. But I don't think that's the selling point of this card. The selling point of this card is maximizing its summon effect and using... and building decks that want to make use of that. Because right now, if you build a Skycrag deck, your sweeper ping options are stuff like Lightning Storm, and that's it. That's the whole list. Yeah, nice Aegis popper, exactly, tags, where... right now in Skycrag, if you want to pop an Aegis on a unit, you're gonna have to use something along the lines of a torch. Like, there's not a whole lot else going on. So, I think it'll be a pretty valuable tool with that, and it's just attached to a decent body. A 3/3 for 4 is a pretty good rate in Skycrag. Yeah, Harbinger, sure. Harbinger's an interesting card to compare this to. It's not quite the win condition on its own or the stabilizer on its own that Harbinger is. Harbinger's one-sided, but it's still, as we've seen in the past, being able to just slap that kind of spell effect onto a unit is really powerful. Really powerful, even if it doesn't have lifesteal. I mean, instead, this time you're getting it for 4 instead of 6, which is a big deal. It means it could come down before your opponent necessarily finds their obelisk or something like that. So I think it's a nice tool for Skycrag to have. It checks off a lot of the things we wanted in Skycrag, where if you just look at Skycrag, like, just filter Skycrag right now, what costs 4 in Skycrag? It's like, alright, Troublemaker, Windshaper, Stormcaller, Soaring Stranger, Serpent Trainer, Dural's Frostkin, Deranged Dynamancer, Recogulator, Rebel Illuminator, Outland Sniper, Guerrilla Fighter, Furnace Mage, Centaur Outrider. I'm going to say it's better than all of those 4 drops in a mid-range or controlling Skycrag deck, right? It just is. It's a better body than something like Illuminator or Sniper, more powerful summon effect than things like Guerrilla Fighter. Furnace Mage can compete with it in slots in certain metagames, I would say, but this has long been a weakness of trying to build Skycrag decks. Was like you just didn't have really anything to do on 4 that could impact the board in a really significant way other than, like, Furnace Mage. As far as units were concerned. And Rebel Illuminator is a good card as well. But that was really it. Those were your options. Well, the Windshaper change to 4 is intriguing, but I don't think that was really what Skycrag was interested in, because Fire doesn't have flyers. But it's important to note that it does 1 damage to each other unit in each player, so it's doing damage to your units as well. You can't play this like in a Queen style deck with Grenadins and Oni Ronins, because you're gonna kill your own units. That's not where you want this to be. Plus, even if it only hit your opponent's units, I think it would end up being just a bad Queen deck, just because Shadow right now just has way more support for aggro than Primal. So yeah, I think it's a pretty cool tool. It kind of slots into a spot that Skycrag needed to be filled. Is it going to make Skycrag the best deck out there? No. I really doubt that. But it's still a nice little piece of the puzzle that we're getting right now. That you know, will be a useful tool for Skycrag decks going forward. That is my evaluation of that. The other card, it doesn't cost 4, so it's not showing up. Oathbreaker. Oathbreaker. Now this is pretty. This is pretty. I like all kinds of like weird lords and tribal types of things, like, you know, just silly build arounds. For those that have watched the stream before, you know I love the constructed deck we've toyed around with before called the Argenport Draft deck, where it's just basically lifesteal units and combat tricks. And hey, this is a lifesteal unit that cares about units with lifesteal. However, your opponent's conceded to a turn 2 Gruon. Yeah, they know. They know the power of a Gruon. It's just the Gruon gets so many free wins. But yeah, Oathbreaker, when you first look at it, okay, 4/4 lifesteal for 5. Not the most exciting card in the world. That's up front for if you're playing for a multi-faction card. You might not be super excited about that. You know, it's about on par body-wise to, like, I'd say Lifesteal and Aegis are about the same power level as far as keywords go, but this card's got a lot more than just a 4/4 Lifesteal going on. Because when it attacks, your units with Lifesteal get +1/+1. So it itself has Lifesteal, so it becomes a 5/5. And any other units you have in play that have Lifesteal also get buffed. So your Silverwing Familiars, your Cabal Cutthroats, if your Bright Mace Paladin's already buffed, it gets buffed some more. Your Reckless 3/3 Lifesteals could get buffed into 4/4, stuff like that. So when it swings, it has the potential to massively buff your board if you build around. Now, we've played, like I said, I've already played around with, you know, these Lifesteal Matters, Argenport mid-range decks, and usually at the 5 slot you're playing either Silverwing Commander or Umbran Reaper. Is this card better than either of those? Maybe. The fact that it's a 4/4 lifesteal means it could be potentially better immediately on defense. Buffing most of your board could be quite powerful. So it's possible. It's easier to cast an Umbran Reaper in an Argenport deck. Double Justice, double Shadow's just easier to hit than triple Shadow in a dual faction deck. Depending on how you build it, I suppose. Argenport already wants to hit double Justice pretty early on because of Valkyrie Enforcer or whatever. So yeah, this card's really cool. If you swing with it once, even kind of feels like Navani, where once you swing with it even once, like you're in really good shape. Like once you untap with it, if you swing with it twice, you've won the game. You've essentially won the game. People might like, one criticism I've already seen for it is like there's a lot of times it's going to come down and it can't block right away. And I think that evaluation of the card is ignoring what the context of your deck is. If your deck is filled with lifesteal units, you're probably in a spot where you don't need to block when you play your 5-drop, because all of your other units have been gaining you life. Oh, somebody's asking, does it buff cards in hand and deck? I imagine it's only cards in play. I don't think it buffs cards in hand and deck. Maybe I'm misreading it, but it specifically is saying, like, just your units. So I imagine they're just referencing your units in play. So it's not that crazy, but it's still pretty sweet. But let's go back to the point I was talking about in terms of evaluating deck context. One, yeah, it might not always be able to block, but a lot of times you won't have to block because your deck's filled with lifesteal units. And you have to think about what a deck filled with lifesteal units is going to be playing. Yes, it might appear to be undersized. I don't think it is. A 5/5 lifesteal for 5 sounds about the right size in Argenport. This isn't a time card. Time cards are going to have larger units than every other faction. So it doesn't really seem that undersized. And you're also in a faction that has access to both Finest Hour and Rapid Shot, the 2 best combat tricks in the game. And you're going to be playing those in a deck that's largely unit-based and trying to attack and race. So I don't think you'll have much problems pushing it or supporting it. It's just a question of, is it better than your other options in that slot in that deck right now, which are like I said, basically Umbran Reaper, Silverwing Commander. You were never really interested in playing Throne Warden, so I guess Ashara too, but I would say it's better than all of those. It dodges a lot of removal, and yeah, it's pretty cool. They were not joking around when they said lifesteal was going to matter. They literally made it lifesteal matter. Having 4 attacks of bad quality, that's the point of Vanquish. It's just the point. And it's not like you're not going to be playing anything else that can't die to Vanquish before this comes out. Not too concerned. That was the big complaint with Arcanum Monitor as well. They're like, oh, you're playing in a deck with no other Vanquish targets. So you know what you did? You played Azaleo alongside it and had more Vanquish targets. So it's fine. Sometimes it'll die to Vanquish, and sometimes it won't, and then you'll win. So it's fine. I think the card's pretty cool. Now, it's a card that's really, you know, only going to be good as the deck that supports it, sort of thing. Like, it does its job to support its deck, but if there aren't a lot of really good lifesteal cards, like, okay, what's it going to do? But there's been a few cards that have been close to playable anyways that have lifesteal. Like, just go through. Cabal Cutthroat's never seen a ton of play. I've played it in some things. Oh, 5. But a bunch of Umbran. But, you know, Lethrite Falchion, Xenon Destroyer, Cabal Cutthroat have all seen constructed play in spots. I doubt you're going to play Vampire Bat. I'm just going to go on a limb and say I'm skeptical of that. Yeah, so there just aren't a lot of lifesteal units at the moment, at least in purely Argenport faction colors. Now, once you expand it, you can maybe look into trying to work Karmic Guardian or Midnight Gale into it, or Black Sky Harbinger, or Infernal Tyrant. Yeah, there's also Amethyst Monument. So, Righteous Fury. Righteous Fury. So, and if your deck's full of lifesteal units, I guess there's reason to believe you can play maybe a bit slower, greedier of a power base, and you can make it work. So, yeah, lifesteal is a delicate thing to balance, because if lifesteal cards get too powerful, it totally pushes out huge swaths of a metagame, right? You just, if lifesteal or life gain become really popular, you just can't play aggro anymore, or burn, or whatever. So, it's or other mid-range decks that are also trying to swing back and forth. It can be a tough thing to balance. Yeah. Yeah, no, this is demanding on influence. It's going to be tough to play this in a 3-faction deck, especially along things like Midnight Gale. You might be able to play it at least alongside a Black Sky Harbinger and Split. Yeah, who knows? But Bright Mace Paladin's always been borderline constructed playable. Same with Xenon Destroyer, same with Cabal Cutthroat. Is this card enough to push them from being borderline to actually playable? Maybe not on its own, but and again, I think you have to take into account, is it much better than Umbran Reaper, or is it enough better than things like Umbran Reaper or can't I remember it now, Commander, to like suddenly make this archetype way more powerful? Maybe not, but I just like that it's new and interesting, and will at least get people to try it some more and put this archetype under closer inspection, a more magnified lens, and just see what the potential is there. It's the same thing with Rogon. Like, we don't really play Rogon in Huru, aggros, spells matter, weapons matter, flyers, whatever at the moment, but Rogon still made us take another look at those types of archetypes, and we learned a lot. Like, oh, Augmented Form's actually pretty good, and a few other things like that. So I can see these cards having a similar impact, where they're not necessarily going to push their archetypes to the top of the tier list, but they're going to at least open them up to more exploration, which will just naturally make them more powerful, because more people will be trying to make good decks with them. So, she doesn't really work with Paladin, but she could work with Paladin. You only have to buff it once. Like, it's not out of the question that deck could be playing things like Elder's Feathers, Inspires, or whatever to give the Paladin lifesteal. You could use a Combat Trick pre-combat. You could play Tinker's Apprentice. There's all sorts of things to unlock the power of Paladin in that deck. Who knows? I don't. You know, you're going to be playing Crown Watch Paladins probably still in a deck with her. You know, if you're playing Finest Hour and Rapid Shots, you're probably playing Paladin. So that's all a thing to consider as well. Like, are you playing Oryx Sentries or Bailiffs or Bright Mist Paladins? Like, is it worth playing this lifesteal theme, and does that mean you're going to end up having to cut Valkyrie Forces? Because then it's not worth it, right? Like, Valkyrie Force is just so powerful on its own. You don't really want to give up that kind of card if you're in any kind of mid-range Justice. So, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, Crown Witch Paladin's still pretty sweet. No doubt about it. So that's my initial impression of those cards. Like, don't think they're gonna warp the meta, but I think they'll be Rogon-esque in that they'll open us up to taking another look at these decks and seeing what they can do. Well, in the case of the Skycrag card, Alpine Tracker, like, that's just totally out there, and unlike really anything we've seen in Skycrag before. Whereas the Argenport card is an Argenport card. It's an Argenport. You know, it's a mid-range lifesteal unit. It's got some interesting text going on with it, but that one's a bit easier to evaluate than the Skycrag card, I would say. I think out of this cycle of 5 cards, Arcana Monitor is still unquestionably the strongest, highest impact card right now, just because it has the most support. It's got cards like Praxis Tokens was just already a deck, and you just got to slot it in and make that deck stronger. Where all these other cards are requiring a few more mental gymnastics to really find a spot for them.